Hello, welcome to another edition of Remembering Reflections from A Course in Miracles. I'm Reverend Krista. So today we are on page 46 of the text. So it is the text. And we're in chapter 3, and we're doing the part on judgment and the authority problem. So in this section, I'm just going to clarify a few things. I'm not going to read it all, but basically, I was wondering in this section when I first started, what did it mean by authority? Like, whose authority? What are we talking here? And what it means, the authority person is God or your creator or whoever that is for you. And so the authority problem is sort of like, what authority are we following? Are we following God or source, energy, whatever you want, a creator? Or are we following our ego mind? So like which mind, what authority mind are we following? And then it talks about judgment in this section. So I would say a lot of times in our world, we think that, people of authority have rights to do things over other people. And because they're in a position of authority, they get to judge other people and all of those things. And so what I've come to realize is that that's not true. There's no hierarchy anywhere. And the only judging is sort of like, if we're in a judging state, then we're in our ego mind. That's it, plain and simple. If you're judging somebody else, it's because you flipped into your ego mind and you're feeling insecure about yourself, or you want to pump yourself up more, or for whatever it is. So I liked the line in here that judgment always involves rejection. And I think that's just like a rejection of yourself, really. If you're judging somebody else, or you're judging a situation, or you're whatever, you've already just now been in your own issues and projected that out in a form of a judgment. And I love how it's always rejection. You're rejecting who you really are, which is love and innocence. So I thought that was interesting. And I wrote some notes in here, of course. So ego believes that it has replaced God. That's the authority problem. And then this produces like a feeling of like guilt and fear in us. And to manage that feeling that the ego made up by making itself God, the ego will constantly use judgments and judging people so I wrote, the ego constantly judges, but judging is unreliable and unnecessary. And only God, if you will, quote unquote, judges, but like not in the way we're thinking. The only thing that God judges is that we are love and innocent. So, ouch. That's a scary judgment, right? And then I wrote over here on this page, I put, ego says, I decide what I am. And the ego says that I'm separate. I'm separate from you, and you, and you, and you, and I'm separate from God above. And I make my own identity. And that's not true. We were created in God's image, and what that actually means is we were created in love and innocence, and only God creates. And so when the mind tries to replace God, so with the ego, as the author of itself, this is the authority problem, the author, it creates, what did I write here? It creates an internal conflict, obviously, because you can't be of two minds at once. And the ego mind and the love mind don't talk to each other. They don't know, each other is there. The ego's just trying to survive and making up all this stuff And so that's ultimately the authority problem, is that you have this conflict inside yourself. You've made the ego who you are. You've made that the thing that you filter all the world through. And then the ego also, I also highlighted on this, and this is on page 47. In the end, it does not matter whether your judgment is right or wrong. Surprise. And because usually when we're judging people, we either want to be right about something and we want that person to be wrong. So in the egos, they say in the ego's courtroom, there can only be one winner. You know what I mean? And that's not true. In God's eyes, we're all winners because we're all love. So it says, either way, you are replacing your belief in the unreal. So if you're in your ego mind, then you're not in your real mind. So then I also highlighted the beginning of the next paragraph, which says, you have no idea of the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers or sisters, whatever you want to say, totally without judgment. So it says you have no idea the tremendous release and deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and others totally without judgment. So imagine a world where we didn't judge each other. Imagine a world where you didn't judge yourself so harshly. Like, what would that look like? And he tells us, peace. It would look like complete peace. And who wouldn't want that? You know, have you ever judged something and found peace in that? Or criticized somebody or whatever, and that made you feel peaceful? Like, not really. Maybe in the moment, but not in the long run. So then it goes on to say, I highlighted, in fact, their meaning is lost to you precisely because you are judging them. There, that's just what I said. So you're just making up stuff to make yourself feel better or whatever, put down somebody else or interpret something some way, and you're just doing it because you don't feel good about yourself. And this could be unconsciously. We do it, we go throughout our days unconscious. We don't even know sometimes we're doing it. And then another thing I wrote here, or I highlighted, was you are very fearful of everything you have perceived, but have refused to accept. So you're afraid to accept that you are love and innocence. And the ego wants to keep you in that state of mind, thinking that it needs to keep you afraid because it wants to survive. So it's going to say and do all kinds of things. So I wrote in the margin here, when you are in ego mind, which is you're separate, when you believe you are separate from God, that's your ego mind, then you then are uncertain about truths. So how can you know the truth of love when you think that you are all alone? You're a separate being from everybody else, and you forgot what love was. You forgot that you're love. You think you have to get it externally. And so that's basically the truth. You then are uncertain about what is true, so you begin to judge everything. So you're like, I forgot that I was love. I forgot that you were love. So now it's like, okay, now we start asking, oh my gosh, I'm this separate person. I don't know who I am. So we start questioning, oh, well, like, who am I? And then you start comparing, and then you're like, oh, well, I don't have what that person has, or I don't look the way that person does, and we judge something as better than something else, and you think that you need to do all these things, and so you just begin this snowballing thing of judgment. Hello, ego, and that sounds terrible. That just sounds like an awful way to live. I also underlined or highlighted in paragraph 5, still on page 47, it says, when you laugh at someone, it is because you have judged him as unworthy. And the next line actually says, when you laugh at yourself, you must laugh at others, if only because you cannot tolerate the idea of being more unworthy than they are. So that's just the same thing of what I've already been saying, just comparing yourself and feeling like in order to make myself feel better about myself, I need to put somebody down and laugh at them or whatever. And that's not true, because we're all equal in God's eyes. So or higher power or creator, whatever you want to say. I also highlighted, it is curious that an ability so debilitating would be so deeply cherished. And I mean, isn't that just what's going on in the world today with all these crazy wars and stuff? We make judging so important, and yet it's just so hurtful, and it's so hurtful to us and hurtful to others. But we don't know any better, and so like we kind of keep doing it. We keep repeating the same pattern. So at the bottom of my book, I wrote a whole bunch in here, and I wrote, we judge everything, and the ego begins to determine what or who is good or bad, and what's valuable, and it tries to control its reality, and it does all this to try and protect itself and keep itself going. And A Course in Miracles says that ego can't judge correctly because it doesn't understand reality. So it doesn't understand love, it doesn't understand this innocence and that we're all one, otherwise it wouldn't be judging. So it says, I wrote down here, only God's judgment is true, which is, what is God's judgment? It is, you are wholly lovable and innocent, and all human judgment is unnecessary. We don't need to go do that, and it's just inaccurate anyway. We're just making stuff up. None of it's true. It's just your belief. So, and the only thing true is that we are all lovable, we are love, and we're all innocent. We're all born innocent, we stay innocent. And then our mind starts tricking us in this world. Okay, so I turned the page, we're on page 48, and I underlined, this belief can exist only to the extent that you believe in the efficacy of judgment as a weapon of defense for your own authority. So basically, sometimes we feel like we're being attacked or whatever, and so we got to judge back and say these things back and forth, and we think it's such a good thing, and we're so efficient. Look how much we can judge and make up stuff. It's really just, judgment is just really just, yeah, like it says here, it's a weapon of defense. You felt attacked, or you feel less than, so you make all these judgments up to try and make yourself feel better. And then it says, the very next line after that is paragraph 6 that says, God offers only mercy, which is forgiveness. And I wrote in the margin, judgment blocks love and perception of truth. So if you're in a judging state, you've completely forgotten about love. You're not in your true state, which is loving, kindness, lovingness, unconditional love, all of those things. So if you start judging, you immediately know that you're in your ego. And I also wrote, judgment comes from fear. So we have all these fear thoughts and all these negative thoughts, and it scares us and scares our ego, and then we begin judging the whole world to try and find a way to feel better. How exhausting is that? Like, really, that's kind of exhausting. Okay. So then it says, there is, however, only one cause for all of this, and whatever is the authority problem. So that's it. You just got in your ego mind. And it says, this is the quote unquote root of all evil. So you may have heard that saying in the Bible, or a saying, the root of all evil. And it's really just being in your ego mind, really. Every symptom the ego makes involves a contradiction in terms, because the mind is split between the ego and the Holy Spirit, so that whatever the ego makes is incomplete and contradictory. So, one day you can feel a certain way, and then the next day you can feel something different, or someone can convince you of something else. So it's never just one solid thing, right? Like it depends on your mood or how you're feeling or whatever. But with the right mind and with God, or your higher self mind, there's only love. So it doesn't matter what mood you're in or how you're feeling, you're just always in love when you're not judging. So it says the issue of authority is really a question of authorship. So it's just that line in paragraph 8 just means who's the author you're listening to? Who's writing your story? Who's writing your book of life right now? You know, is it you, or like which side of you is it? Is it your ego side that's writing this book, and how does that make you feel? Or is it a state of love that's writing your book and your world right now, and how does that feel? Feels a lot better. Be in love. And then just skipping to the end of page 49, I did a lot of highlighting at the end here, paragraph 11, and it says, I highlighted, free will must lead to freedom. Judgment always imprisons because it separates segments of reality by the unstoppable scales of desire. Wishes are not facts. To wish is to imply that willing is not sufficient. Yet no one in his right mind believes that what is wished is as real as what is willed. So the end quote here says, instead of, quote unquote, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, like you would have heard that in church or in the Bible, he says, say instead, will ye first the kingdom of heaven. So instead of seek, he's saying will. And so I wrote here in my notes that the kingdom of heaven is not something that you search for, so you don't have to seek for it, because it's not outside of you. It is your true state. It's our inheritance. It's just that we need to be willing. We don't need to seek. We need to be willing to change our minds and to accept that we internally are the kingdom of heaven when we are love. So I put, i.e., using our minds to accept what is already true. It's always true. Love is true and oneness is true. And that's the only thing that's true. So we don't need to seek something outside of us. Seek and we shall find. No, it's will ye first the kingdom of heaven. So just acknowledging, will you first just acknowledge that you are, this loving divine being of God and created out of love, and you are love, and that's all you are. So the power of the mind to just remember what you already have and what you already are. That's what I wrote. I also added up here, I wrote notes that says, A Course in Miracles teaches discernment through the Holy Spirit, not ego judgment. So, because we know that the ego judgment, it can never be discerning, because it's making judgments through a state of mind that is in fear. So how could anything come from that that's good? So, the Holy Spirit doesn't condemn. It reinterprets everything through love. And I started this and I said, heaven isn't something we find, it's something we choose to accept, that we already belong to. So I thought that was just really beautiful way to end that. And I hope that sort of helps you think about that section in A Course in Miracles. And I just want to end by thanking you all for tuning in, and I'll see you next week or next time. And I just want to remind you all to rise gently and remember to return to love that you are. Okay.